My, good, you're here. I am so excited. Guess what? I hope this isn't about your podcast again. Why, did you finally listen to it?
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. The Groomer Next Door production. Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
All right, this week I am so happy to have TAZZ LATIFI. She is the owner of Petropolis in New York City. You've seen her on her Facebook channel when she goes live. She's a nutritionist. She has a great store, and I'm so happy to be able to sit down and talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am grateful to be on.
It is a pleasure. And, you know, it's been fun because we've had multiple conversations now since before even starting this. So I've been able to kind of learn a little bit about you and watch you on your live channels, which I told you about. Now, that's always fun to me. I wish I could say I'm as brave as you are to do it. I one day will get there, but today's not that day. So tell me about your origin story. How did everything begin?
How did everything begin? Well, I was in the corporate world prior to this, and I happened to be flying on 9/11, and everything that took place that day kind of set me on this path. I just felt that I didn't want to be on airplanes anymore because I was spending a lot of time on airplanes, traveling from manufacturing facility to facility. I was in consumer goods packaging, and I just decided I don't want to travel anymore, and I have been rescuing animals since I was 18 years old. And I said, maybe it's time I started a business. And at the time, I was working with a couple of homeopathic vets and holistic vets on my own animals, and I was making my own raw food for my cats, and I was making my dog, one of my dogs who was passed, Stephanie, she had kidney disease, so I made her own kidney diet. It was high quality proteins, balanced carbohydrates, high fats, and I kept playing with the fats at that time, and I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was just figuring things out. And this goes back to 2002, 2003, because I opened the store in 2005.
Wow.
So I'm going back, I'm dating myself. You could tell how old I am now. So, I just kept reading, and there were great books out there. They're just fabulous books. Dr. Richard Pitcairn, great books about herbs for pets, and I read them all, and they excited me. So, when the plane landed that day where we were supposed to land, I just said, maybe I'll go into the pet world and start teaching people, have a store and teach people, and then take it from there. I'll figure it out. And that's the origin. And,
wow.
And I opened, by the time I researched places, areas that I wanted to open, and looking into locations, which I think I picked very poorly initially because there was nobody in the financial district in New York City at the time but me and a couple of dogs. So it was very interesting, and went around the world, and I learned a lot, and luckily I was getting paid well, so I kind of was able to support myself for the first few years where I wasn't profitable. So step by step, I learned about retail and brought it all together. So that's where it started.
That is seriously probably the most unique origin story I've actually heard yet. I mean, I've heard some great ones, but to think I've never heard anybody say I was on a plane on 9/11, that's frightening in itself. I remember, I'll never forget, I was working for Disneyland at the time, and I'm watching everything unfold, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and here you're really dab smack right in this whole thing where, oh wow, that's frightening.
But we didn't know what was going on. So the pilot said, It was hysterical. I mean, I thought it was funny. He said, well, we'll be landing shortly, and there won't be any flights in the U.S. once we land. Good luck getting to your final destination.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
sitting there with clients, and I'm thinking, what the hell happened? And when we were flying over, because we actually flew over the towers to go south, there was a lot of, I thought it was clouds. I wasn't really focused. I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. I was staring at a book or my computer. I didn't even know what I was doing, but my head wasn't in looking out the window. We didn't know what was going on until we landed. So, it was, yeah. So we landed, and that was it. I decided, yeah,
Thank
because
you for
we
being on the
figured
ground.
things out. We
Yeah.
figured things out as things were going. The stewardesses were talking. We figured things out as things were going. So, yeah, it was just odd. It was a very surreal day, and it's odd.
Life changing.
That's how it started. Yes, no
Wow.
kidding.
I mean, I've been on planes that have had mechanical issues and they don't mention anything, and then all of a sudden you get to your destination and you find out, there's probably something wrong. But that's
Yeah,
much worse.
it was a little freaky. Yeah, afterwards, when in hindsight, it's freaky. But when you're going through it, you just kind of deal with it as it comes.
Wow. Well, I mean, every bad thing has, something that can come out of it and kind of grow into something big. You obviously have done that. Now, the next question that we'll come to is it's almost that chicken to egg kind of question. So what came first, grooming or nutrition, part of the business?
Always nutrition.
Okay.
That was always my priority, and then there was no doubt about it. When I opened the store, I carried I had a tiny little freezer at the time, and I really wanted to have like a whole wall of freezers to do raw foods, but there weren't that many brands available. It was just Nature's Variety that I could get from one little distributor called Rondak, and so there wasn't much out there. And I remember I had Jackie Hill, who now runs Answers Pet Food in my apartment, guiding me about raw food. So, and she was with Nature's Variety then. So it's and all I wanted to do was just sell raw meat because I saw what it did for my cats, but nothing was available, and I just kept thinking, what am I doing? Am I nuts? Is this something that do I really want to do this? And then I said, you know what? I'm going to put a bag of Iams cat food and a bag of Iams dog food on the shelves, and every time someone picks it up, I'm going to tell them why they shouldn't buy it and redirect their attention. So slowly, I was able to, and obviously I wouldn't sell that bag because I didn't want to buy more from my distributors. I just did not want to buy more of that crap. So I was saying, no, don't buy this. I even gave away other bags of food so they wouldn't buy that. It was just, I was a little bit unbalanced and didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I thought I could change the world. And I've managed to help a lot of animals, so I'm grateful for the customers that have tolerated me.
Well, then I'm going to ask the question now. I asked you this before we started, but now it kind of changes the question in a sense to then to now. But I had asked you about the soapbox. When you go into a store or even in your own store, do you ever just kind of stand on the soapbox and say, this product is just terrible for your dog, this is terrible for your cat, and here's why? I'm not saying belittle, I'm not saying put down or makes anybody feel stupid, but that whole, almost kind of that soapbox back in the day where it was covered wagon and this guy had this miracle stuff. Do you ever do it then or now?
Okay, so the soapbox scenario, when you asked me before, I thought outside of my store, because outside of my store, I don't like to talk about pet food, I don't like to talk about pet diets, I just don't. And I hear someone talking about their pets in New York City, everyone has a dog, or there's always a conversation in the background, and I'm always, hearing things, but I just don't offer my guidance, assistance, or who am I? That's how I see it. Who is a stranger going to tell another stranger what to do or what not to do? So in a space where, in my store, that's the space where people come looking for information, yes, I will get on I will get on a tiny little pedestal. It's not a big soapbox, but it's a very small, and I just explain to them the differences between what they're looking for, what they think is quality, to what I think is quality. I give them the connection. And, you know, there's a couple of brands that I just say, it just sucks, and here's why. And then I shut it down and I step away. And you have to make a choice. As a consumer, if you know, the whole point of what I'm doing is to educate the consumer to be able to make the right choices for themselves and know how to identify what the brand is all about based on, and the labels are very misleading. So one, by labels, and also do your own research. There's a lot of information out there. So that's what we keep telling our clients in the store. And yes, I stand on a tiny little pedestal, not a soapbox, and do preach a little bit, but never outside of my business. It's just not a place. Outside of the business, no. In my business, in my store, I pay the rent. I'm going to do a little bit more than I
You know,
think it's good.
I told you this. I said before when we were talking about this, I said everybody has the most unique answer. And you've followed through on the most unique answer because, you know, I've said this so many times, so I'm going to repeat myself to anybody who's listening to this, but when I'm at a big box store, I see it. I see name brand, great products for the actual pet parent, and just the bottom of the crap for the dogs. And I cringe, and it's hard. My wife always says, "Don't say anything," and yet I'm dying to just stand on that little soapbox. Now I'm 6'7", so obviously a soapbox is probably not necessary. You can pretty much see me anywhere in the store, but I just want to actually say, look at this product, and I understand this big pet product has put millions of dollars in this bag to tell you this is good for you, so it's good for them. And it's complete bogus. The colors are there to drive to your eyesight, to drive you to want this bag. This has nothing for your dog. This is nothing for, but I of course don't. Now, the podcast and in our own shop, yes, it becomes obviously the same as you. I'm always talking about pet food and how it's terrible and you're killing your dog or your cat with this stuff, but I'm with you on that. But there are probably a little bit of times, maybe, I'm not going to own it, I do actually say it in stores.
Well, when I go into stores, I look around and I ask a lot of questions because I wonder what the employees have been taught. That's always my fear, what the staff is telling the pet parents. And I'll ask questions, and often I'm just taken aback by the misinformation. And I know all these pet food companies have education programs, and they teach these big box store employees how to sell their product. But you know, if you don't understand the basics, you're not going to be able to understand how to sell a product, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
So they don't even understand the basics, and it's really difficult to hear just opinions. And I cringe because they could really be causing a lot of damage for pet parents who don't take initiative for the pet's health. And not everyone does. You know, we are the minority. The people like us, you know, the ones that really, we are the minority. And having these conversations is so important because we can get out there eventually. People can share this information, and you know, somebody will have a sick dog or a sick cat, and they'll say, you know, I heard something about something on Facebook and this person, why don't you watch it? And it could trigger them to change the whole way they're thinking. But when they go into these big box stores, yeah, I think the education's really lacking, and these businesses, and they're there for a reason. You know, they're employing people, and you know, I know pet foods are so commoditized, but what needs to happen is we need to give them just the basic principles so they don't mislead, and the consumer can go do their own research. When when they're misleading with the information, then we're going to get sicker and sicker animals, and that's what's happened.
And it's sad. I mean, it's sad that, you know, I've had this conversation with Cole, I've had this conversation with Dr. Becker, I've had this conversation so many times, but it's the cigarette manufacturers, big tobacco, and what went on with them. but it's now just taken a place in food. And in a country that is so conscientious on food and what we as the pet parents eat, and we're not concerned with what our dogs or cats are eating, it shocks me.
Well, I don't think we're as conscientious as we think we are on the human side. I think we want to be. I just don't think we are. I think people are constantly rushing to get nowhere. And food is no longer, food is comfort, so junk is comfortable, And just like with treats, you hand out treats to your cats and dogs like crazy just to quiet them down, or because they're begging and you're not going to get up and take them out for some physical activity. They're begging because they want your attention. It doesn't mean they want you to hand them food. So people are reactive and they use food to comfort. And that we need to use food as fuel. I'm type 1 diabetic. I have been for 42 years. So for me, food is my fuel, and if I misuse food, my body will deteriorate and break down. So food is my fuel, and that's how I treat it with my animals. So they have to get quality fuel to be able to run properly. And for myself also, and my friends that know me and people that know me, when they ask me about food for themselves, or when I do, because I do nutrition education for newly diagnosed diabetics, I have them volunteer at a couple of places. So, when they ask me, I always connect again. Yes, there's pleasure, and you can use pleasure and fuel and mix it up, but don't abuse it.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
Right. So I think we want to come off as a healthy country when it comes to us taking care of ourselves, but the majority aren't. Why do you think we have such high cancer rates? Not only in animals, but in humans. Diabetes is on the rise. Obesity is on the rise in animals and in humans. They're all interconnected.
I tell people I don't eat meat anymore. I eat chicken, yes, and
That's
fish.
Meat.
It is meat, yeah. But I don't eat red meat. And it's just because I can't stand the fact that farms are just abusing animals. And, at some point I probably won't even eat chicken, just for the simple fact that I find that the abuse of animals on these farms are just atrocious. So I gave up red meat. I gave up pretty much almost anything like that just for that simple reason. People look
Really?
at me and they think I'm crazy, but I'm like, I'm sorry, but have you ever been to KFC? Of course I have. I love KFC. I'm like, have you never noticed how the chicken tastes terrible? Well, that's just their chicken. I'm like, yeah, it's called steroids. It's terrible food. And
Well, you don't even taste chicken anymore because the chicken's so highly. I think the chicken farms that are mass producing are, these chickens are growing at this rate of 1 million times per second.
yeah, mutation.
And they're developed so we could consume them, and our animals eat all the parts that we're not consuming. That goes in the pet foods and the crappy pet foods. So, in the end, with Kentucky Fried Chicken or anybody else that makes fast food or junk food, it's all flavorings, it's all additives, it's all palatants that get us to want to eat it and get us hooked on it, and it becomes almost an addiction. So the same thing with correlating to the animals here, because same thing with the animals. So all these foods are sprayed with palatants. When you read the pet industry magazines and the pet food industry advertisements and all the media that they put out to us retailers and pet industry people, you'll see all these companies coming out with, what are the trends now? How can we make it better? How can we get animals to eat more of this and make it cheaper? I mean, that's all underwritten. So, you have to step back and say, okay, what do we need and what do our animals really need?
Yeah.
And that's just simplicity, whole foods, balanced nutrition, and we can get that in the outer aisles of our supermarkets, so, and we have to take some time and prepare. Our animals need balanced diets, but not all the time, so as long as you're doing good quality meats and some vegetables and the right fats, you can give that to them, a couple of times a week, once or twice a week, and then have balanced nutrition. And we're not even sure what balance is because, these Afghanistans seem to be out there. There is some science. There's a lot of science behind it, but then there's a lot of lobbying behind it too.
Yeah, that's the
So
problem.
so I sit back and I think, what am I going to do and how am I going to look at things? So I do that for myself. I do that for my animals.
It's funny how once you get into this pet world and you start to care about it, how you've adjusted. I mean, I've adjusted completely to the other side since I got into this world. And it's funny, once you get into it, that's when you start to realize everything. It almost becomes like a light bulb turns on. It's crazy. Well, let's go into your grooming side because, obviously by having a grooming shop as well, I'm always kind of curious to talk to other people. Now, I was talking to you about this before, and that was the whole part about anal glands, external and internal. Which one do you do? Are they just the external or internal? And we had a brief conversation, and I just thought we would actually kind of go over that a little bit.
Okay. I don't like touching animals' butts. I mean, in the grooming area, I don't like my staff doing it, my groomers doing it, and that's because it's such a sensitive area. We don't want to mess with those muscles. If the animals are not expressing their own anal glands, one, they could have some problems with the anal gland region, and the other is they're not getting the right foods, so they're constantly having impacted glands. So I would prefer that a veterinarian does it internally than us doing it externally. I mean, once in a while, especially if they're the bathtub and they express it themselves, we have to finish the job, make sure the area is clean. But generally, it's not something that I am a fan of doing.
Me neither, but it's part of it, unfortunately. Now, I'm unfortunately, I don't know how to do internal. So I can't even say, I do them both. I've only done external, and really, honestly, it becomes just part of, at least in this part of the country. I think in the West Coast, I think my wife said this, it was quite common in California. It's not a terrible thing. It's just you really got to get in there and make sure you squeeze it the right way.
Correct.
It's just make sure you get it all and make sure you clean the area. But I saw it and I was just like, I thought I would topic that, because I'm always kind of curious to see what the West Coast and the East Coast, how they differ from everywhere else, because it does change and it shocks me.
A lot of grooming shops on the East Coast just do it. It's an automatic process. They're bathing the animal. They squeeze they express the anal glands, and then you move on. But if you're getting your pet groomed every 6 to 8 weeks, and that's happening every 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to really cause some damage, I think.
The only thing I will jump in on that is, when you're cleaning in that region, and that's, obviously every time you're bathing any dog, whether it is that 6 to 8 weeks, you're in there, you should be checking. I hope that, and I always say this to the other places out there. I'm hoping that they're checking. I'm sure that they are, but, you shouldn't be feeling it full every time. But then again, going back to the nutrition side, if they're eating nothing but the worst, most likely that's going to happen.
We had a client whose dog would come in every 8 to 10 weeks, and she would ask for us to do the anal glands. Finally, my groomer said, "Will you please talk to TAZZ about food, because this is not normal." Okay, so we changed the diet, and it took about 6 months, but the anal glands didn't come back, and that was about 5-6 years ago. We stopped doing it, and she saved a lot of money because I charge a lot for anal glands.
That's what caught my attention.
I know, and I do it because, do you really want it? That's if somebody comes in just wants anal glands done and no bath or anything. With the grooming, it is much lower in price. It's half that. So, so we changed the diet, and diet does impact anal gland impaction. So, yes.
It is crazy. Now, another thing I noticed that, we're probably well known for this part as well, and that is you obviously take in it, which I'm going to say this for a lot of people who don't know, a lot of groomers, a lot of grooming facilities do not, and that is take dogs with special needs.
We do.
We do too. We do aggressive dogs and special needs. So I'm always interested to hear, what are some of the things that you make sure are done before you actually accept the client? What are the questions that you ask? What are some of the things that you have as concerns?
Okay. First, it depends on what the problem is with the animal. If it's something that we feel we can handle, usually we have two people, my head groomer and one person helping her handle a dog that has special needs. So there's always someone holding and supporting that animal, always. In the bath, on the table, we'll do them on the floor if necessary. So we're always supporting the animal. If it's with aggressive dogs, I have pulled back a lot on that because my groomer had her toe severed by not toe, because I could had her toe severed, had her finger severed because somebody didn't tell us her dog was aggressive.
Ooh.
And didn't tell us, and the dog just, introductions were fine on the table. The dog was fine. My groomer went to do the nail, the behind the toenail, and the dog just turned around and snapped and took the top of her finger off. And apparently it had happened multiple times with a Frenchie with other groomers, and nobody was willing to take her. So that's kind of changed my view on aggressive. And we couldn't tell that dog was aggressive at first, and then afterwards he was going haywire. He was nuts. So there was something that definitely triggered him. It may have been a health issue, and I don't know. But and he had done it before. But overall, if an owner comes in and tells us that the pet has some issues, my groomer's she was a dog walker for 20 years prior to this, so she handled all kinds of dogs, and she has a beautiful sense with animals. It's innate for her, so she works with the owner, asks all the questions about what causes them to react. Have they eaten? A lot of times they're better when they haven't eaten, if they've been fasting. If they haven't had any food, they tend to be less reactive, believe it or not, because when their stomach is full, sometimes they get a little more antsy, and a lot of people tend to not walk their dogs long distances. They bring them right to the groomer, and that's it. And so the full stomach will make them a little uncomfortable. You were going to say something.
I laughed at that. No, I was just laughing because that happens to us all the time. I mean, especially your morning appointments come in, even your afternoon appointments. They'll pick them up for lunch, pick them up from the house. They haven't been walked. They bring them to the shop, and then the first thing that they do is, I gotta go, and it's all over your kennel.
All over your kennel, and they're antsy. They're uncomfortable, and they're reactive. When they have to go, they're reactive. They have anxiety attacks, they get barky, they whimper, they won't let you touch anything. So we want to make sure that they've been walked beforehand. So if a dog has a particular problem, my groomer always asks, has he had a good full walk? Have you gotten him tired?
And, it's funny because this is something that, when we started the podcast, it was really just going to be about grooming, and it obviously has grown into all this. And it's something I guess maybe I've had the soapbox moment with this too, where it's, would you want to go get your hair done and have a full bladder? I mean, how would you feel? And then think to yourself that actual hairstylist is going to push and poke you in all areas, including your bladder. What would you think? Would you be aggressive? Would you be upset? How would you feel? Think about it that way. And a lot of people don't really take that into consideration, which shocks me.
No, it's amazing, right? I just don't get it. I mean, I always pee before I get my hair done.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't really go and get my hair done. I mean, when I did have short hair, my wife did it because I don't like to be touched. But I just grew my hair long just because, tried something new. But if I was to get my hair cut, I'm going to definitely empty my bladder. Because I think about going to a movie, and when you're sitting there, you drink a whole thing of soda and you have popcorn, what's going to happen? That's kind of the same idea, the same premise. as what these poor dogs are going through. And yeah, they will get aggressive because like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Why can't you understand this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are things. Those are just the little minor things that we ask about, and we hope that the pet owners being honest with us, and the ones that are really we do very well with the dogs that are aggressive. And my groomer really hates to use muzzles, but if we have to, we have to use muzzles for everyone's safety, the animal, the groomer, the rest of my staff that's in there helping. So we do use muzzles where necessary. And if we need the owner to come back, so like a lot of dogs don't like to have their nails done, if we need the owner to come back and help us, most of the times we don't like the owners there because they'll cause more aggravation and the animals will become more reactive. But certain cases, especially very outgoing dogs, as I call them, the ones that want to tell you what to do when the owner's there and the owner has good control, they tend to calm down and allow us to do their nails better. So we have the owners come back and hold the dog, help us, and we teach them how to hold the animal. And they see how difficult it is. They can't do it themselves. So when they get a feel for how it's done and the difficulty behind it, they bring them in more often.
And what's funny is I'm thinking through this, everything's wide open for everybody to see in our shop, because we were very much conscientious on transparency, and that's another story I'll tell you privately. But one thing, I don't use nail trimmers unless I have to. I like grinders. I think that they're a lot less.
We do that too, yeah.
So they're not aggressive, and I just like it better. But I will use a muzzle, especially if a dog is nippy. And I'm more or less, one thing that I like to do with the muzzle is I use it as a training tool. I've had dogs that have very high anxiety to nail trimming because there are a lot of groomers that, and to this day, they're still out there that believe that you have to at least make them bleed a little bit to know you got all the nail. And it's this weird old school. Yeah. It's an old school, my wife was telling me about this, old school, and I actually heard it from a grooming instructor I had, that you want to make sure you click them just a little bit. That way you know you got all the nail. And that was the old school.
No.
I know, right?
Never.
I was...
Any clicking, oh my God. My groomer has nightmares about it.
Oh, I do too.
The dog.
I do too.
And she's like, oh my God, I hurt Henry. I hear it for 3 weeks. I'm like, it's over. Henry was okay. It's fine. You did the pinky toe. And I swear she gets so upset. And she's old school. She's not new school.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I'm with you on it. I mean, I have the same thing of the actual solution you put on when you click a dog, the little powder.
Yeah, the styptic powder.
Yeah. I still have the same one I bought when I went to Grooming Academy 2 years ago. And it's still practically as full as it was then. That's why I stopped using the actual nail trimmers, because I'm like, I'm not going to click a dog. But there are things, and so we'll get dogs, and we still get them, I'm sure you do too, that have had terrible experiences. So rehabilitation has become almost a standard, I would say, in practice. And I'll use the muzzle. I will sit there on the floor, and I have the dog, whether it's a small dog or it's a very large dog like a Great Dane, and they sit on my lap, and if I have to, I'll muzzle, and then we gradually can work without that.
Yep.
But it does happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because my groomer, she's showing them everything. They're smelling everything before she does anything. She touches the paw with the clipper. She touches the paw with the grinder, and then they smell it again. Then they smell her, and they have a conversation, and then they sit on the floor on her lap, and she gets a couple, and then, one of us goes and holds, and, especially the dew claw. It's always a battle with the dew claw. But, and a grinder. So it just depends on the dog. Everything's individualized. There's no right answer for anybody. So that's why we ask a lot of questions from our clients. So we want to know. We want to make sure you know your pet. And we tell them if we find something wrong and if something comes up and there's a behavioral issue, we let them know exactly what happened in case they don't come back to us or they're moving or something goes on. We just want them to know.
Same here. I'm literally exactly the same. Everything's transparency. It really, we're in the business of more or less daycare with a nice new look. They come in, they're fluffy, they're dirty, some are matted, their hair is overflowing. They leave,
Mhm.
they're supposed to be nice and soft and clean and well trimmed and happy. That's the other
Yeah.
thing, happy.
Yes.
So, yeah. Let's move on to something that's very close to nutrition. I mean, it is literally right next to it, and I know that I'm pretty sure I'm going to hit a topic with that you're going to be like, yes, and that is shampoos. Because we all know that the terrible shampoos that are out there,
Oh,
and I'm not even going to tell you, I've heard, actually, I'll say it. The place I went would use human shampoos, including Suave, which drove me nuts.
what?
So, yeah.
Animals' body pH is so different than
Uh-huh.
ours. It
Uh-huh.
just doesn't work that way. Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't last very long there. I lasted. My wife was like, "You're leaving now."
Mhm.
That and a million other things that happened. But yeah, shampoos. I mean, it's very similar to nutrition. I mean, you give your dogs bad food, and their skin is going to become cruddy, and everything goes bad.
Mhm.
And with same thing with shampoos. I mean, the dog's gonna chew, the dog's gonna itch. Tell me. Um, Give me your opinions and what do you recommend?
Okay. I'm not a junk shampoo person. I like quality. So the brand that I love, and it's not pretty, but because it's all brown. People like to see colors or clear, and I like this herbal product called Wickedly Potent, and it's pure, it's vegan, it's safe, and there's beautiful varieties. I mean, they have smelly dog shampoo that has lemongrass in it, um, lavender, rose. It has it's made with olive oil and coconut oil. I'm just trying to remember what the hell is in there, but it's one of my favorites, and it doesn't have much of a scent. So I'm not a person that likes perfumes and smells.
Mhm.
But there are lots of people that do, and of course my staff says you gotta get some stuff. So I have the nudie sprays and some of the nudie shampoos for people that want the
Yeah,
smelly stuff.
yeah, the
But
finishing sprays are very
yeah,
common. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm a fan of beautifully made herbal products, and that's why I like the Wickedly Potent brand. It's just one of my favorites.
Simple enough. I mean, I was actually expecting that soapbox to show up and really going for it. I was,
Told you I don't do that in
well, I was
public.
hoping. It was my thing. I mean, I get a little animated when it comes to wanting a dog to smell all pretty and, perfumey. That bothers me. Like,
Me too.
I want all of the shampoos that are used that are actually for the dogs to do their job, not to actually smell like a human. But I understand that people want it to smell like, in a sense, like a human. So I guess I can't be too much, but it completely erases all the good that you just did. 'Cause all the time when you're actually washing a dog, a lot of times you're washing off the perfumes that the person has that's, transferred over to the dog or the
Mhm.
colognes. And so I always think, well, if I'm washing that off, why am I putting it back on? But
Right.
it's a way of life. And I imagine, you're right there in one of the biggest metropolis, very cosmopolitan kind of cities. So imagine it's probably very common.
It is, but the people that use my business understand what our core values are, so they let us manage the process and don't tell it. I mean, we have a couple of dogs that are like, do you have a little spray? And, we'll show them some of the better quality sprays. Do you want us to use this? And we use it. But honestly, it's just, they come to my business because they know what we're all about. And we're not a foo-foo Upper East Side type of place. You want that, and you could pay for that up there and do what you want, but we're just not that. We're about taking care of the animal, making sure they're healthy and their grooming is safe, and they get cared, proper care, and we get them in and out. We don't have everyone show up at 10 a.m. and put all the animals in a cage and have them done one by one. Everything's by appointment. Everything's scheduled.
Hmm.
And then we call the owners 20 minutes before they're done. So can get out of there, so they're barely in the crate. Just don't want stress. Less stress, happier animals. That's just how I see the world.
And it works. It works. Now
Yeah.
we take a little bit longer, and it's a little bit longer of a process, but we have, and it's this new setup that we put into this new shop where we're seeing that the dogs are more relaxed, and they're actually coming into their kennels and they're going to sleep now, which we had never seen before in the previous place.
Great.
It's kind of a new. I don't know what we're doing it, but it's working. So I'm not gonna fix what's not broken. But
We need to talk offline about that, because I want to know what's happening, what you've changed, because that would be great.
It's kind of funny. It's a lot to do with just personality and us having fun and enjoying it. But we also have our rescue cats now that are in the place, because we just rescued. Well, we had 3 surrender to us, 1 rescued this past week, and they're just running around, and there's just this kind of vibe that we're just all enjoying, and they're all pretty much going to sleep. I mean, I'm surprised by it too. They're a little bit extra large kennels, a lot bigger than a standard one would be, so they're not cramped. They can stand, they can turn around. I mean, pretty much a female Great Dane can fit in these happily. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't know really what it is. They're made up for them so that they're more like a little doggy hotel room, I guess, so that they just go in there, they're chill. And everything's very open for them to see. Maybe that's the difference.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, because they can see everything. They're not behind walls and, kind of nothing to look at. There's a, big glass window that they can kind of see. I mean, there's a lot of different things. That might be what it's doing. I don't know. But yeah, it does work. I mean, it's not only nutrition. It's not only about care. It's just this big, that's what I liked about learning more about you and different things and talking with you is I was like, oh, somebody else who shares in this. So it kind of was cool.
Yeah.
Cole told me that was going to happen, actually. He says, oh, yeah, that's going to happen. Actually, I think Jay did too.
Wow.
Yeah. Which we will talk about them in a minute, which I'm pretty sure they just said, he said my name, even though they say my name when they're doing their videos, and I just kind of get a giggle. But let's go over to where I might be able to get that soapbox out. Let's see. Let's go on to nutrition. And I'm going to see if the first question I'm going to ask you actually gets the soapbox out. And I've done it a couple times already. So, like I said, I do it a lot. Biggest misconception by pet parents and what they believe.
Biggest. There's so many big ones. I'm on the soapbox.
Told you I'd get you there.
Well, that chicken and rice will heal everything. And they think that rice will stop diarrhea. They think that chicken and rice is the way to feed home-cooked food. And they will go weeks and weeks and months just feeding chicken and rice, chicken and rice, chicken and rice. And the other thing is that grain-free, any brand can be grain-free and it can be good. And they don't even and natural, the word natural. If the package says natural, it's organic. Because those two things go hand in hand. So I'm just going off on a tangent now. So the natural and organic is what really sets me off, because I have people come in and they say, I bought this organic food. I'm like, well, what organic food? Not too many out there. What's organic to you? And nothing is organic in reality in pet food unless it's just there's a couple of brands, very few, that you can really confirm that they're organic.
Very true.
And not every part of the food, of the packaged food, is organic. A big portion of it is. So, when they confuse natural and organic, we need to stop. Grain-free is not the end-all, be-all, and the best. A lot of grain-free products are so high in fat, they're so out of balance that your animal becomes sick. That's why we have a high level of pancreatitis happening all over the place. And it just scares me, because they think, well, I'm giving him grain-free food. Well, you're giving him all fat. And these emulsifiers that are holding the food together, fat and carbohydrates, and where's the protein to balance it out? So, yeah. Did I answer the question?
I like to see you go out there like I do all the time. I it's just nice to have somebody else who is, as passionate about this as I am. So, you know, it's funny because the one misconception, and you hit that, is, well, I'm going to go raw diet and it's going to be that chicken and rice. And it seems to be that's the only such thing that you can prepare at home. I've heard that before. I'm like, no, there's other ways. There's other proteins. There's other vegetables. One thing that I really was able to take away from being able to talk with, and I'm drawing a blank now, Darwin's Pet Products was just the different parts and vegetables put in, because I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I learned something as I'm listening to it. I'm learning and I'm going, that's cool. And it's like, yeah, you do hear it. Well, I boiled chicken and some rice and that's going to be the, everything. I'm like, no. And then, you start to hear about the cats and, they won't look at a carrot. A dog will. Cats are, all carnivore. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. And, you go through all these things. It's like, look, chicken and rice is not a raw diet. That's not everything. There's so much more.
First of all, rice has to be cooked. So that is far from raw. And the vegetables, if you give your pets vegetables, if they're raw, they should be pureed, because our animals don't have the ability to break that down in their mouth, the vegetables down in their mouth. They don't have the enzyme, the amylase. So, the vegetables, if you're going to give raw, should be pureed. Otherwise, it should be steamed. So if it is gently cooked, lightly cooked, then it's still not raw. So, and then the chicken, are you actually going to give them raw chicken as a parent? A lot of times they're cooking the chicken, and they're overcooking it. They're like letting it boil for 4 days.
Okay.
And, no, I'm exaggerating. And they take the skin off, where the animals need that fat as well. So they're making it so out of balance. Like Dr. Becker has her, and I love her. I have so much respect for her. I learn something every day by reading her posts. But like she has her bland diet, which is ground turkey, lean ground turkey with pumpkin, and the ratios are right there on her site. Very simple, but it's a short-term transition. It's for a short period of time while your animal is going through, whether they have parasites or they just have garbage gut, something happened, they ate too much crap, or they swallowed your sock or your shoe, and you have to give them something simple and gentle on the digestive tract to reduce inflammation. So that is a very simple diet. And you can use ground chicken as well. It tends to have a little higher fat than lean ground turkey, but you can use ground chicken as well. But it's not a long-term food that you can give the animals. So that's the one thing. That's one of the big misconceptions. They can just give that over and over and over again and think they're doing good.
And, the part that I have a problem with it, and, it's just a simple, this is a simple logic, I guess you could say, is the fact that there's great people out there that have these businesses that are making just the right balance of everything for your pets. Yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more than if you did it at home, but you're going to get the right amount. Everything's balanced correctly, and it's prepared. So you're saving on convenience, and you're not going to worry about where the food, especially here we go back to, me and where the food came from, where the protein came from. You're going to know it came from the right place. And that's the big key right there, is whatever the protein is that your dog is going to consume, or your cat, it's coming from a reputable farm, not just anywhere.
You're talking about like a brand like Farmer's Dog or Ollie Pet or Evermore, right? So on the home cooked side. So I agree with you. There is so much available that is good, and many people are going that route, and it's a wonderful thing. But again, you still have to stay on top of those companies, because every company is for sale at the right price, and anything can change in a nanosecond. And I don't care. I don't care how great of a company it is. The consumer should always have a relationship with the brands that they're feeding their animals, and also alternate. Don't stick to the one thing over and over again. Like when someone says, I've been getting, and I like Farmer's Dog. I love Evermore. It's one of my favorite foods because they're truly transparent. And they sell direct to consumer and to the retailers. So they have other avenues. You know, they actually have opened up a lot of doors because they direct to retailers, and retailers can talk about their product and get people on home cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an amazingly made product. But I always tell people to not pigeonhole themselves with one brand, because what happens if there is a problem with that brand and the 6 batches that have been shipped to them back to back because there was something done wrong with the quality control. Mm-hmm. Remember, we're all fallible humans. I mean, we make mistakes as humans. Mm-hmm. And quality control is done by humans, right? So quality assurance, quality control is done by humans. So if someone has been working at the facility and they're doing something wrong each time, missing a part of the supplement pack, not putting everything in there, our animals can become deficient in a specific nutrient that can cause a lot of sickness. So, like thiamine, for example, for cats. So, I always say alternate your brands. Don't stick to the same thing over and over again. The risk is diminished for your pets. I'm just thinking of the animals. I don't care about the companies. You know, I'm coming out with a line of food, but I don't want, no cat's going to eat my food consistently over and over again. I think that would be crazy. I think it should be combined with raw, it should be combined with quality canned, it should be combined with home cooked. And you know what I make? I think there should be a balance, and you have to constantly give variety to the animals. One, they get different amino acids from each protein that they eat, the different vegetables that they're getting. They get different nutrients. So that's really important. But if you wind up doing the same thing, because we're creatures of habit. Mm-hmm. And what's comfortable, and they say, oh yeah, my dog's been on this for 7 years. He's done great for 7 years. Wow, why all of a sudden is all his fur falling out? Well, maybe he can't absorb some of the nutrients in this food anymore because he's been getting only this food.
Very true. I mean, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned Farmer's Dog. I had one of the owners on. Oh God, sometime last year, I think. And so it's funny that you had mentioned it. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, there's a story in that's. I'll go into that another time. But it's funny that you mentioned them. So at least I always worry when I have somebody on. I'm like, I hope that they seem like a great brand, a great person. So. That you mentioned them and you weren't actually going, they're terrible, makes me feel a little better.
No,
but I do agree.
I love when people use quality food sources and whole foods, and there's a level of integrity that they carry with them in their brand. So I love that. And there are lots of foods I can say, I hate that shit. Yeah, I'll say it. But they're not one of them. So there's lots of good companies, and I prefer to talk about the good than even touch on the bad. I think it's not even worthwhile to touch on the bad. If we don't mention them, they won't get any recognition, so we step away from it. We only talk about the good.
Well, part of the bad is that there's so much. So talking about the good, there's so little. It's easier to talk about the good because it's easier to highlight it. Because we got pretty much everything that's bad is right there in front of us, whether it's social media, on TV, wherever, even in magazines. So by talking about the good stuff, hey, at least, let's highlight that. Let's just stop talking about the bad.
Yeah. I just think because it'll drive the consumer to the good, and they'll think, okay, they didn't even mention my food. I wonder why.
Right.
And let them take the initiative. Let the consumer, in the end, we're all individuals, and we have to take responsibility for the choices we make with our pets' foods, with our foods, with how we choose to live our lives, how we treat other people. We have one life here. It's not that hard, and we can make it hard or we can make it simple. So I choose to simplify.
I like simplifying. Now, you say let's talk about the good. So I'm going to transition to two ladies that are probably on the top of that list. You know them well as Jay and Adrian, and everybody else knows them as the two crazy cat
ladies.
Now, of course, as we said that out loud, they're probably cheering that, because I'm pretty sure that I'll mention that, we're going to talk about them, and I'm pretty sure they're listening right now. So whatever day they're listening, I'm sure they're enjoying it. So hi, Jay. Hi, Adrian.
Hi, guys.
I love talking to these two. It's one of the highlights. I love watching their different live videos. I've told them that I've said the same thing to you. I'll watch your stuff. So I try not to chime in too often. I'll tell you, whenever I'm listening to their stuff, I always want to, join the conversation. I never do. I like to actually be a spectator once in a while. And whenever you go live, just always know if I chime in and say hi, I'm there, or maybe I won't say anything at all because I just don't want to draw attention, and always wonder if I throw them off when I say things. I've never asked that question. But on to my whole point that I was going to make, because I was kind of like almost speaking to them through this weird thing called a podcast. Now, you had mentioned the other day something before we started recording. You had said how you love their product and you use it as well. So is there anything you could tell us about it, and what product line is it that just goes, to the top, or what is it that you love about it? I mean, just go on a whatever there is. I don't know if it's a soapbox for it or whatever we would call it, but tell me, what is there about the product that just works for you?
Okay, they sent me samples of the product to look through and I guess give them my opinion on. I don't know why the hell it would matter, but I certainly did. And I kind of got excited because one, everything's liquid, and for cats, that is just so awesome. And I tasted I tasted everything. So I want to know what it tastes like. I want to be able to look at my cat's reaction, and I smelled it, I tasted it, like their Catastic wellness kit for cats that they have with the catalyst, and of course my cat food's named Catastic, and then I see their Catastic wellness kit. I was cracking up. I said, I love this. So I really love it for that reason, but kind of boost myself. But their catalyst product with the enzymes, I just thought, okay, liquid form. This is great. Let's see if my cats are three of the biggest schmoes you have ever met. I'm in love with them, but they challenge me and they bitch me out, and they're cats. They're amazing. So I said, let me see if they'll take the catalyst. I bet you any cat will. And I always give them supplements, and I have to build up with the supplements I give them. I give them small amounts to get them accustomed to it, and then I have to build up to the proper dosage. So the catalyst, I just dumped a load on their food, and I looked, and everybody walked away. I said, oh, no, don't. Please come back, please. I walked away, went into my bedroom, came back. All three are eating their food. 10 minutes later, I said, oh, this is great. I was jumping up and down like an idiot. So that's one of the things I like about their product. It's all liquid. So easy to administer to cats. With cats, you have to simplify, just like everything else in life. But their ingredients are, SOD. I love superoxide dismutase. It's very strong, wonderful antioxidant. Helps with vascular function, and it has so many positives. Detoxifies. It's a great product, and I saw it sitting in one of the products. Oh my God, this is awesome. And then they have a product for feline leukemia, and there's a rescue group in New York called Aslan Cats, and they only take in feline leukemia positive cats, and they're just an amazing group of people. And that's the first thing I thought of. I said, oh man, maybe this would be good for them, because all their cats have feline leukemia, and cats with feline leukemia tend to have a lot of oral diseases and heart diseases. So if this helps keep them healthy, then fabulous. And again, the ingredients are beautiful. And when I spoke to those wonderful ladies, they understand what they're doing.
They do. And they're rock stars. I mean, they really are. I tell them that all the time. I mean, they really are. And they're just like, no, we're not. I'm like, oh my gosh. I first, for one thing, I'm going, they gave you a sample set? I mean, seriously? Jay, Adrian, I did not get one, but that's okay. But I think they're the greatest. They are absolutely the greatest. Now, I thought you said this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you carry that now in your store, correct?
I'm going to bring it in. Actually, I just got the package from Jay with her wholesale package, so I'm this is the weekend I review a lot of things for the store, so I'm going to do that, and I will probably be talking to them on Monday to place my order.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know for a fact that I'll probably talk to you again and again. So we'll go back to that at another time. But yeah, that I think that they're great.
I have given out a couple of their products to a few of my customers. One client whose cat has very, very stinky poop. I'm waiting to get feedback from her. And then I have given the urinary cat to a client whose cat has struvite crystals, and
Ooh.
she doesn't use dry. Finally, I got her off dry, but she tends to buy more. She buys little bits and pieces from my store, and that's usually when she has questions about health and wants to catch me and get some free advice. So she shows up and asks me a million questions as I'm trying to, do 40,000 things, and then she goes buys garbage food from the supermarket. So I said, here, take this urinary cat, try it with your cats, and please tell me that you're going to switch to a higher quality food, and we'll take it from there, because I'm never going to talk to you again. So I'm hoping that, because I'm not, because I feel used and abused. So I'm hoping the urinary cat helps her with her cat's urinary problems. Because quality meats, quality proteins are really do factor how the animal reacts, and the high moisture value really makes a difference, but it still has to be quality in the can.
I agree. I mean, for two things, they're carnivores, and this hard, crappy food causes dehydration. So let's just make that as simple there as possible. Well, moving on now, I'm not going to say who, but there was a little bird who told me that you were starting your own food line. Now, what can you tell me, if anything? And if you can't say anything, I completely understand.
No, it's a cat food. It's a cooked cat food line, and I've been testing it with my cat clients for the last 2 years. I make samples, give it to them. Cats taste it, and they tell me if the cat's eating it or not. So I got it down, and it's completely balanced. And it's not just for intermittent feeding. You can feed it at all times, but I'd never recommend that for any brand. And it's called TAZZ. And the name of my food company is Fantastic, and the cat food is Catastic, and I will also have a dog food, and we're working on things. I'm working on things. Unfortunately, I'm one person at the moment, but I'm working on developing it all. But the cat food will be on sale at my store, and I could ship it in the next we're talking probably August, September shipping it, but I'll be selling it at my store in the next month.
Well, this gives me a reason to say, well, then you have to be back on the podcast. So that just kind of leaves that door wide open. Now, you had a run-in with a certain director of a certain documentary called Cole Harrington. I always like to know what your interactions was like, what was he like, and any funny things that happened that weren't caught on live when you were doing Facebook Live or different things.
Well, we have our chats every so often on what is this, the Apple chat thing? What is that, video chat on Apple?
Oh, the iTalk. No, not FaceTime. Yeah. FaceTime. There we go.
Yeah.
Couldn't get that right.
We FaceTime, and Cole has. I absolutely adore him. He looks at every aspect. He's very clear on what is happening, and he's incredibly fair. He gives everyone the opportunity to speak and give their side, and he asks incredibly detailed questions where it makes you think. So if you don't want the truth to get out, then you don't want to talk to Cole.
True.
So that's how I look at Cole. If you don't want the truth to get out, you shouldn't be interviewed by Cole, because there's something that you don't want people to find out. And he's trying to find out what the facts are so he can put them together. So the average Joe who's watching that documentary, and I'm an average Joe, and so is almost everybody I know, so we can understand what's going on and make educated choices. So I am grateful that I know him, and he has taught me a lot, and I hope I've taught him a few things because we have conversations often, and just love the man. And he's introduced me to so many wonderful people. Yeah, the two crazy cat ladies and vibrant canines, Krista Powell, who's brilliant, and just great people. And yeah, I'm just grateful that I was able to. And I saw him at the Royal Animal Health University with Dr. Royal and Dr. Karen Becker. So he was there. So we had a great time and fabulous conversation. So I'm just very lucky to have him in my life, and I hope I can give something back to him.
I completely agree. I mean, he's entertaining. I mean, he just sometimes just says, "I just want to have a chat," and I'm just completely like taken back, like, okay, sure. I for the longest time I would just talk to him through Facebook, and he's just like, "Why don't you just call and we'll have a chat?" And I'm just like, "Because you're busy." He goes, "No." I'm like, okay. He tends to throw you off, which is funny because I talk about him a lot during the podcast, and he goes, "Oh, I have to listen to that sometime," which I also thought was very funny and very truthful. So maybe he listens to
I
this one.
would like to say something about Cole. I don't know. Well, I'm going to say it. I was not a huge fan of Broadway, and I live in New York City. And this man shows up, in New York and talking about Broadway, and he's going to see 4 Broadway shows in a day. And I'm sitting there saying, "What are you, nuts?" And now I go see Broadway shows because of him. I can't believe it. I mean, I asked for Hello Dolly tickets for my birthday, and I got them. So I was like, woohoo! The things that make us happy these days. So thanks, Cole, for reintroducing me to New York City's Broadway.
See,
LA.
we actually had that conversation not too long ago. He's like, "You've never been to New York?" And I go, "No, it's on my list." And he goes, "I cannot believe it." He goes, "I love going for the plays." And I go, "Well, I have a playhouse here in town, and I go see, shows, and,
Oh, no.
I love that. I'll see him. I mean, I think it's kind of cool." And he's like, "Oh my God, you gotta go." And we had this long conversation about it. So yeah, he's telling me, I went to Pasadena for this one. And I'm thinking to myself, man, when I lived in Los Angeles, that was the one thing I never did. I never went to any plays. I didn't even know where there was an actual theater, surprisingly.
Oh, my. So next time you're in New York, you bring your wife. We'll
Hmm.
all go out to the theater together and have some fun.
I'm totally with you on that. I'm taking our daughter for the first time. She's going to see her first show tomorrow. We're seeing Footloose here in town, and she's
Cool.
barely hitting 9, so she's right at that age that she can appreciate, hopefully. So
Oh,
we'll see how that
especially
works.
Footloose. The music's so fun. You want to get up and dance.
That's kind of
Yeah.
what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that just really hits her at the right spot. So, keeping on with everything, um,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing with the name Petropolis, and I'm probably completely butchering how I'm saying this wrong. Petropolis. I think I'm saying it exactly right. In my head, it's going out right. I think I'm saying this right, but then something's telling me I'm saying it wrong. But how did you come up with the name?
Oh, okay. So there's Petropolis, my brick and mortar store, and Petropolis, my nutrition consulting business. So, they're kind of alike. So, I didn't come up with it. But I wanted it to be, I'm in the middle of a metropolis, obviously, in New York City. I'm in the financial district. And one of my dear friends, Derek, he just comes up with names like he can pull them out of hats. He's brilliant. Every time I need something, I call him. And I called him. I said, "I'm opening a store, and it's in the middle of this metropolis." And he knows I love fit slang, and I just thought, it's like the movie. I'm there in the corner. It's like the movie. And he's like, "I don't know. Okay, whatever." So he came up with like Cats and Pups Deli, and he came up with all these names, and then Petropolis, Cats being Katz, and just all these really funny names. And I was rolling half the time, and then I see Petropolis, and I'm like, oh, then I could do the logo like the Metropolis poster, like the Metropolis, with the female figure in the center, with the city in the background. I said, but I'll make it a cat and dog face combined in one. So he came up with a name, and I came up with the logo. So that's nothing big about it. Nothing exciting at all.
I always like to know. It's kind of like the origin story. I love to actually, learn more about everything, especially, nowadays. I mean, we can read a bunch of stuff about, or watch you on Facebook or watch it's all the different things we can do, but you really never get the opportunity to find out how it all started. So I actually find it interesting. But that's just me. I'm weird. Well, my last question I have is, what would you like to mention that we didn't talk about?
Well, okay. What I do, I teach people about nutrition and how to feed their pets properly. And doing these Facebook Lives, I answer questions all the time during the small time frame that we have. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of emails and requests on Facebook and via email, as I already said, just a lot of questions about what should I do for my pet. And they give me a blip. They give me one sentence of what's happening without any detail. And I am not comfortable with giving just this advice with so little detail. And also, I'm trying to make a living, pay my bills, take care of my own animals, and have a life, and it's my job. One, to run my store, two, to educate myself. It's all these things cost time and money. So it's important that people realize that, yes, there's lots of information on the web, but when it comes to your individualized pet, you have to have the ability to put it all together. And I can't answer you based on a single sentence that you have emailed me or sent via Facebook, unless it's just about, hey, I'm using this food, can you recommend something better? Sure. Just give me your dog's information, a little bit of information about your dog, weight, what you're doing, activity level. I can give you an overview answer. But don't tell me your dog has chronic kidney disease and stage 2, and what should you do, and he may have thyroid disorders. I can't help with that. That's why I have the consulting side, and I could handle that on an individualized basis with a nice amount of time allotted for each individual animal, and we can get you real proper information or get you set up with the right doctors who can help you, right integrative vets, if I certainly can't on the food side. If you need to go in another direction, I'm open to redirecting to good doctors. So, it's just, I can't answer everyone's questions, just not as black and white as we assume. And all the information is not out there for your individual pet. Just because your aunt has done something with her pet a certain way and it worked, or your neighbor has done something, it doesn't mean it's going to work for your animal. So consider that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, name that song with one tone kind of thing. I can definitely see that. Mm-hmm. That would be hard. Now, do you find it that you're getting more traffic because you're kind of under that pet fooled umbrella where you see that more people are driving towards you, or has this always been kind of like this?
Well, more people are definitely are driving towards my businesses. So it has its positives and negatives, and the positives are definitely that we can get animal diets changed and educate consumers. The negatives are when people want with generalized questions, they want detailed answers and they want to heal their animals, and it takes more than that. And time is a huge factor, and I just, I can't spend my whole day giving direction and not work. I have to work.
Yeah.
So there's a balancing act, and that's why I've chosen this as my vocation, and so I can do both. There's always some giving, but there's also, you have to give back as well, and take your pet's health into your own hands and learn. And usually, like 1 or 2 sessions with me and you're done. You don't need you could do a yearly follow-up, and we can get your animal on the right track when it comes to food. So everyone assumes it's such an expensive process, and it's not. It's just.
It's actually more expensive to feed the garbage than it is to feed good. And the simple fact, the simple way of just kind of underlining is less money in vet bills.
Yes,
There it is.
exactly. And knowing what to do for each animal, we have to make it individualized.
There it
Which
is.
key.
Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I hope to see that. I will hold you to it. I have you back on here again. Let us know what's going on in the future as well.
Absolutely. I'll send you samples for your cats.
Cool.